Let's talk about this story, and I want you to lead this one because this one is really stunning. I mean, well, I guess we want to give some context here first on what this Black Lives Matter bombshell of a story is in the New York Magazine by Sean Campbell, who, by the way, we should stay. This is, I think, we would like talk about skin color of reporters often, right? Like, hey, this story was written by this guy. He's a white guy, but I think in this context. This reporter is a black journalist named Sean Campbell, who really dropped a bombshell and amazing reporting from New York Magazine. And no one else is covering this in mainstream media.
Right. This is, I think, the angle that makes this worth talking about, because last week, a reporter for New York Magazine published a piece detailing all of the ways that the Black Lives Matter movement has been spending its money. And it does seem provable that this organization has lived, the founders have been spending the money in lavish ways, right? And so what's interesting is that this, which is, it's a very damning piece, does not seem really to be surrounding this organization or harming them, because so many journalists are afraid to talk about it, because talking about it is something that can get you associated with racism, right? And so I admit I'm nervous to talk about it, but the more I read into this story, the more I felt like it's cowardice not to, because this is an organization that made millions of dollars in donation from people who, like us, just wanted the country not to be a place that's unsafe for Black people, right? So the slogan, Black Lives Matter, means you automatically understand fundamentally that the country is not the same experience for people of different skin colors, and that something must be done to make it so that we all have a similar experience with law enforcement. This money was raised on the images of Black children who were slaughtered at the hands of law enforcement, right? And so what happened now, the New York Magazine has pointed out that these organizers have bought $1 million homes in Canada and in Los Angeles. And in fact, the one in Los Angeles was sold for $3 million. And then a few days later was sold for $6 million. So somehow this $3 million profit was funneled into somebody's hands. At the same time, the local chapters, organizing chapters of Black Lives Matter, are saying we actually have not been able to get money out of the organization to help, let's say, activists for law enforcement, right? Or legal defense funds for people for families that were harmed, anything really. But at the same time, these founders, this $6 million home, they're saying, is a creative space. They call it campus. They're saying nobody actually lives here, but we can go here and brainstorm, which, okay, like absolutely, people who, with this intention, with the intention in mind of equalizing racial experiences, should have a space to advance that cause. So fine, but one of the founders was using this for like cooking videos and things like that. What are you gonna say?
Well, I'm gonna say.
Real quick, I was going to say to that, there was a story that I read that it was bought for $4 million by somebody in Black Lives Matter, and then sold to another person in Black Lives Matter for $6 million.
Right. I thought the numbers were three, actually. So that $3 million profit was not accounted for. It does seem like there's a lot here that's just like, it's currently, not possible to post the article about this. There was a post article on one of the home purchases on Facebook, and Facebook has started blocking that and labeling it abusive, right? So attacking Black Lives Matter or asking about what the founders have been spending this money. This was about the first home in Canada when it became public that they had what? Oh, okay. You keep sort of breathing like you want in.
Because I have a lot to say. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just trying to give context here.
Okay.
And so when that article about the founder's home in Canada became public, Facebook started stopping the sharing of that article by saying this is abusive. So again, like if you ask for an accounting for money that is not taxable because it's going to a charity, then you could be labeled abusive or racist when, like, I want to say I'm not a racist, but I would like that for non-taxable money to have an accounting like any other charity has to.
Well, there's so much here to unpack. Number one, you hit at the top, and that's why I was trying to jump in, because you were like, I'm uncomfortable talking about this. And I was like, the reason you're uncomfortable talking about this is because at the heart of Black Lives Matter, if you care about social justice like we do here on this show, you care about people, you care about police brutality, and you care about young black kids being killed by police forces with giant freaking armored vehicles that are given to them by the Defense Department because we spent $800 billion on a defense budget. So here, take all of these additional SWAT equipment and everything else that you're going to do. Shoot first, ask questions later. And so you care about these stories like Trayvon Martin. We care about these stories about redlining and the housing crisis in the United States.
Sure.
We care about these people not being able to defend themselves. They have no money to defend themselves at trial. And so when
or people who live in concentrated areas with more pollutants because of their skin, the color of their skin, we cover that all the time. Absolutely. These are the types of things like getting pollutants out of these neighborhoods. Like all of these things should be the work of Black Lives Matter.
So then when you hear a story like, well, Black Lives Matter is allegedly fraudulent, and oh, by the way, they raised $90 million, and and guess what? That money is not really going to what you think it's going to. So it makes you uncomfortable, right? It makes you uncomfortable.
I'm uncomfortable with you saying fraudulent, because when you give a donation, you give the fiduciary of that money to the founders of that organization.
But don't they have a responsibility through they have to file, and they have to show where they're spending this money. They have to say, and they have to specify where this money is going.
Right. And that's what's damning about the Post article or the New York Magazine article, is that there's proof that they were actively trying to hide the purchase of this property.
So that's what I want to get to.
When I talked to somebody that had a charity organization, I think it's a 503c or something like that, I think they're called. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about how stringent the taxes are for those versus a regular business.
Yes.
Like it's even more so that you have to account for everything.
Right. In fact, the charity was awarded tax exempt status from the IRS in December of 2020, meaning that they would have to disclose information about donors and about donors and expenditures in an annual filing known as a 990. But they did not do that for 2020 or 2021. And it seemed like they had an attorney working for them because they weren't actually doing this. Amazon Smile then suspended the organization from its platform in February of this year. And Black Lives Matter has removed donation links from its website. And then in March, actually, the Black Lives Matter Super PAC sent an email soliciting donations for political contributions so that they could get candidates that they support elected, and they got in trouble for that. They had to actually give that money back because according to IRS charity rules, you cannot be a charity and solicit political contributions at the same time. So they then said that they were going to refund that money that they raised through their Super PAC.
Angel Baby Card says, I'm so confused. And you should be, because it is a confusing story. And the fact of the matter is they raised $90 million, right? From people, from good, hardworking Americans who maybe sent them a $10 donation. They thought that their money was going for social justice. It's going to help. Instead, it gets spent on a $6 million house. And when this reporter, this is one big part of this story, Sean Campbell, he reaches out to the Black Lives Matter organizers to get to the heart of this story, like what's with this $6 million house and more, has a lot of questions about it. It turns out on March 30th, he says, I asked the organization questions about the house, which is known internally as Campus. Afterward, he said, leaders then circulated an internal strategy memo with possible responses. So they basically circled the wagons. Oh no, this reporter's asking questions.
Well,
right?
I'm unclear about this. How did he get access to this? Did they send it to him?
He got access to this email. Afterwards, leaders circulated an internal strategy memo with possible responses. So there's someone there trying to do good, right? And someone's concerned about this and leaked these internal emails to this reporter. Among the things that they were then angling back and forth in this email exchange was, can we kill the story? That was one angle. another angle was we need to deflate ownership of this property, meaning we need to like pretend we're not really owners of this mansion. Okay, that was another angle. And there's like bouncing ideas back and forth, like how do we lie about this? How do we hide this? Another part of the memo includes bullet points explaining, quote, that campus is a part of a cultural arm of the organization, potentially as an influencer house. Like what was that crazy house where if you're like an Instagram influencer, you would go, what was it called?
I have no idea. I wasn't invited.
No, you don't. I wasn't invited either, but you would go.
Ronald McDonald House?
No, it was called like... anyone in the chat, let me know. It was pretty popular last year. It was called like Hype House. That's what it was called.
Well,
anyway,
they were looking for ways to both say it's a safe house because our founders have been threatened personally, but also we're going to use it to broadcast our message far and wide. So both things can't be true. It can't be a safe house and also be a place to broadcast far and wide.
Right.
That doesn't work.
So how are you? Yeah, it's simultaneously a confidential refuge and a place for broadcasting to the widest possible audience. So the memo also says there's holes in security in our story. The fact that we used public YouTube videos, like we had, because these members of Black Lives Matter broadcast from this house on the back patio, and we're talking about like, and there's cooking videos and other things. But I think that's one big piece of it. Like, how are we going to angle and hide this? People donating money, $80 million, $90 million to Black Lives Matter for what they believe are good causes, right? There's all sorts of trouble with Black Lives Matter, even beyond this story. But people donating money thinking it's going to go for good causes. And then the third part of this I think is really troubling is that these executives or these people that are at the higher ups of Black Lives Matter are like living this sort of lavish life in the $6 million mansion, while actual on the ground, boots on the ground organizers for Black Lives Matter are literally can't pay their rent.
Yes.
And there's lots of reports in this story about these boots on the ground organizers for Black Lives Matter who don't live in this mansion, can't even pay their rent, and they're literally at poverty level. And
in fact, one mother of a black child that was killed by police brutality said, "Please stop fundraising on my child's name because you're not really helping us at all."
Yeah.
And so, okay, what can we do? So there's two questions here that bother me. One, will this story touch them, or will it slide off like Teflon? Will they actually like follow the rules, file their 990, and stop political action, campaign, donation, solicitation? And what can we do if we care about a movement like this, but do not want anything to do with this organization? Are there ways to, locally make a difference, right? Like,
well, and the thing
support
is, like,
legislation in your own town, perhaps.
And we know that the model can work. Like if they wanted to have a very lucrative model, they could just follow the Pink Ribbon campaign model, because the lady that runs that is like very rich. You know what I mean?
Sure, Lance Armstrong said the bracelets, right? There's, fine.
But I have a problem too with this reporter. I mean, let's talk about this reporter. I mentioned he's black. Someone in the chat says he's brown. I guess that's what we're saying now. Don't call him black, call him brown. Okay, he's a person of color. Nevertheless, he says he's gotten death threats now. And the fact he's, people calling him racist, that they're saying like, how dare you like bring this story? And even one of the original people featured in this piece says that he's spreading disinformation about me, and he has an axe to grind with me, and that's how quickly this kind of a story gets swept under the rug among liberal media.
Well, it's worth asking: are there other charitable organizations like this where the founders have benefited personally, and we don't look? I don't have an answer to that, but that question.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I brought up Pink Ribbon campaign, because that exactly happens. They're making so much money hand over fist. That's $1 billion industry.
But is there anybody personally making money?
Oh yeah, the people running it, the quote unquote executives at the top, are making a lot of money.
So then we should see an equivalent story.
Yeah, I mean, there's been stories. Remember the Jerry Lee Lewis telethon? I mean, I was a part of that at one point when I worked.
Oh, right.
I worked for NBC News back in the day, and the way that this would work, if you were on an NBC, I think it was NBC, you used to carry the Jerry Lee Lewis telethon, and it was like an all-day thing, right? You would call in and you would give money for Jerry Lee Lewis, whatever it was. and they would raise all kinds of money. And so what they would do is the Jerry Lee Lewis telethon organizers would fly you out to Los Angeles, like as a news anchor. So like I worked for that NBC affiliate in West Virginia, and they flew me out. I was the main anchor to Los Angeles, and all of these other news anchors were flown in for a weekend, and where we were like sort of trained on how to do the whole live, long, all day charity thing for our hometown. Like, you're going to be on the air for 12 hours. It's going to be a long day. Here's what we found really works. And it was almost like a training. And I was young and naive at the time. I was like, okay, this makes sense. That way we're all on the same page. It's for a great cause.
Yeah.
And then later on, when you have the open internet and you're able to dig deeper, and you find out, like the Jerry Lee Lewis telethon, like almost none of that money goes to actually helping the people that need it.
So just I know this is a small thing, but it's Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lee Lewis was the musician who wrote
Great Balls of Fire.
Oh, yeah. Jerry Lewis. I'm sorry. I think Jerry Lee Lewis. No, it's not a small thing at all. It's totally different.
I watched a documentary too on the Pink Ribbon campaign, and that's exactly, I can't remember the percentage, but the percentage that goes to the actual breast cancer awareness is very small compared to all the people, all the...
Well, then if these exposés exist about white-run charities, then it's fair game, right? But if this was the only expose about a charity being mismanaged, then we could see the racist angle, right?
I mean, it's ridiculous. Yeah, exactly. That would be the racist angle here. I mean, but the fact that, like, I think the other side of this is that woke media is blocking you from sharing this story. Like, I want to share this New York Magazine story on Facebook about how Black Lives Matter has taken people's money and bought $6 million houses with it, and has mismanaged money and is holding fundraisers that are not actually going to the root cause of what they stand for.
It destroys the narrative that they all go to. You're a racist, you're a Nazi, and you're a homophobe. Like, that's their triple, their hat trick.
But those are Trump words, right?
Threat, yeah.
Those are Trump words. Like, if we actually want to talk about whether or not this is right, that people donated to this with the intention of, I would say that my donation, and I mean, I put the Black Lives Matter hashtag on my Peloton, so I get high fives from other people who are like-minded. Sure. But I don't condone this kind of like to luxury house space. That was not the intention of joining the movement. So, that's all I have to say about it.
Yeah, Sandy says, Jerry Lee Lewis married his 13-year-old cousin. Yeah, totally different one is not who I meant. I meant Jerry Lewis. Jerry Lewis telethon. Yeah.
Right. But also, like, as a taxpayer, right, there's this idea that you can buy a house with non-taxable money. And, most of us cannot do that. And is that right? And as a taxpayer, we're giving them a tax incentive to do something, which I think the intention is not this.
No, I don't think so. I think when you cut a check to the Black Lives Matter movement, you're thinking, okay, maybe this goes to help housing issue, for the poverty issue, the social justice issue, and in the end, it's not doing that. So
well, and the thing is, like, there's no arm of the media that holds any of these accountable. It's like, and I keep talking about the Pink Ribbon campaign, but it's like people that donate to that have no idea how much money is actually going to what they think it's going to. But there's no journalists holding them. Like I said, there's a documentary, but it's one of those buried documentaries that you have to search for. It's not like prime time, media source did it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there are some sources out there that can document like how much money, when you donate money, does it go to the particular cause, or is it like the Jerry Lewis telethon? I think the number at the time, don't quote me on it, was like 75% of your donation to the Jerry Lewis telethon thing. It went to basically like gatherings and like parties and get-togethers and things like that. It didn't even go to the actual
like
charity.
Your taxpayer dollars.
Yeah. It goes to bombing other countries. It doesn't go to actually infrastructure in the United States.
Oh, no, your taxpayer dollars will also buy expensive 4th of July parties for diplomats all around the world. Too.
Yeah,
that's true. Oh, and as we now know,
something I support.
They're sex parties.
Yeah. That's right. The Republican sex parties.
Philip is for that. He likes hot dogs.
I'm all for that. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's eat hot dogs in countries that don't eat pork.
To think about it, though, honestly, I would rather spend more of my tax dollars went to lavish parties than to know how many bombs we're making and dropping places. If if they were, if I know, unfortunately, but if they were like, you know what, we'll do less bombs but more parties, I'd be like, psh, do it.
Well, and a lot of people didn't realize in 2008 when Obama was
Hype House.
I can't remember where Obama was bombing, but we actually ran out of bombs. The United States ran out of these specific bombs that they were dropping and had to make more. Like
that happens,
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Like I can't
It's
believe
finite.
I mean, that's something we should never.
We're down to 1 6-pack down here. We better be making a call home.
Yeah. David Dean, the human juggernaut, says, I knew something was up with BLM. Reason why I never donated, I gave to people who I knew were traumatized. So
awesome.
That's a way to go straight to the source rather than through an organization.
Yeah, there was a lot of like grassroots organization in Portland, because I know Portland was kind of like a BLM hotspot, but where like they would fight evictions by if they found out somebody was going to be evicted, they would just go en masse to that house and basically just like surround it and camp. And not allow the people to be forcibly evicted.
There you go.
I mean, there's a lot of really
well, because that should be the job of the police.
Sure,
doing
there's
that anyway.
plenty like that need to be done, right?
Exactly.
That's a need.
Like when did the police start working for banks?